Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. Once again, you are welcome here on the Éveil des Consciences platform. This is the top story in international news. President Vladimir Putin, highly angered by the actions and measures taken by Ukraine, has just announced the creation of a buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia. As you are no doubt aware, in recent days Ukraine has significantly intensified its strikes and drone attacks, carrying out a series of coordinated operations all along the border. These actions have been observed in multiple areas, whether in the Kursk region, the Bryansk region, or the Belgorod region, with each location experiencing increased military activity and heightened tensions as a result of these ongoing attacks. All these Russian regions are now under a barrage of missiles and drones from NATO or Ukraine-NATO. This situation shows that NATO is engaged in a counter-offensive that dares not speak its name. Russia is not really respecting this anymore these days, even though Russia is carrying out reasonable surgical strikes. But let me tell you, in just over 24 hours from May 20th to 22nd, 2025, Ukraine launched 432 drones, actually 485 drones, I was going to say, that Ukraine fired at Russia. And that's the number that Russia was able to intercept and shoot down. And that's just the drones, not even counting the missiles that are coming in. You know, the brief pause that both sides had during the holiday period and so on gave Ukraine's allies the time they needed to rearm Ukraine, and in a big way. And today, the momentum that Ukraine has gained, the NATO-Ukraine, as we often say, the momentum that Ukraine and NATO have just gained against Russia, if Vladimir Putin doesn't take action, I'm telling you, they won't be able to win, but they will wear down and batter Russia. That's why Vladimir Putin has decided to create a buffer zone in order to do so. What exactly does this involve? Let's go deeper, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go deeper. Let's try to see. First, a buffer zone, by definition, is an area located between two geographical entities. A zone that separates the two entities. The meaning of this particular term, as we commonly call it a buffer zone, can actually vary quite a bit. Depending on the specific circumstances, it varies. In times of war, it's a line that is drawn. A line not to be crossed under any circumstances. In normal times, the buffer zone is created by mutual agreement between the two. You see, when efforts were being made to move toward peace in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, under the auspices of the United Nations, a proposal was made to create a buffer zone where UN peacekeepers would come to intervene, acting simply as an interposition force. But now, as I was saying, under normal circumstances, it is up to both states to come to an understanding and create an impassable buffer zone. But when the initiative comes from Russia in this situation, it means the situation is extremely serious. So Russia is going to establish this line. Anyone who approaches the line, it will be over for them. And the worst part is that from this line, from this buffer zone, they are going to bring things down. Vladimir Putin is unhappy. He is very upset because in his speech, Putin stated that the Ukrainians are launching drones, launching many things without making any distinction. They are targeting civilian infrastructure, they are targeting civilians and so on. So it needs to be stopped. Putin has even decided to allocate funds for the restoration of the fortifications that were there. This means we are heading straight back into the full-scale and active resumption of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. So, what did Putin say? Let's go a bit deeper. In Putin's speech, he says that Russian forces are going to create, or in any case, have created a buffer zone and are currently establishing it. It's a security zone along the border with Ukraine. A security zone, it's meant to ensure that all of Russia is in eternal complete security. For now, one wonders, I ask myself, is it going to be a wall, a giant wall that will be built with spaces where soldiers will be stationed or drones will be installed, etc.? We don't know yet. So Putin announces the creation of a buffer zone along the border between Russia and Ukraine. And he announced during his speech that Russian forces had begun to create this security zone. He stated that enemy strikes were targeting civilians and infrastructure, as we mentioned earlier, and non-military infrastructure. However, according to the rules of law in war, you cannot attack non-military infrastructure. When we are at war, you target military infrastructure. But it must be said that now, on both sides, it's a festival of violations. Russia violates, Ukraine violates, Russia also violates. And so since enemy strikes are targeting civilians and non-military infrastructure, Putin has ordered the government to prepare a reconstruction plan for the affected regions. So while the conflict continues, the regions that are affected, Putin wants to rebuild them and also restore other fortifications. So the buffer zone will be implemented. This is causing fear, it's making people panic, because it concretely means that we are facing a real escalation of the conflict. And at this point, if the buffer zone is permanently established and completed, it means that on the battlefield, Russia will have no reserves because its territory will already be protected, even if we have to put protected in quotation marks. So the situation is becoming more complicated. And on the other side, the Europeans are worried. Germany, the new German Chancellor, was just asking the question, is it really certain that America will withdraw its troops from Europe? Because for now, it's just a rumor. Even though the ambassador of the United States of America, who is on the western side, I believe it was him, announced that for 30 years, America has wanted to withdraw its troops from Europe, and that this time, it will happen. It is the president's will. So, things are starting to get very complicated, both for Ukraine and for the West. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that was today's top news. Thank you for sharing it as much as possible, and I'll be back with you shortly. This was the voice of your one and only samurai.